The massive chamber on Zephyria Prime buzzed with nervous energy as dozens of alien species gathered for their monthly council meeting. Ambassador Kethver of the Ethereal Collective stood at the center podium, his translucent blue skin shimmering under the artificial lights. His forearms gestured wildly as he spoke, a clear sign of distress among his people. "We cannot ignore this any longer," Kethver said, his voice carrying through the universal translators to every corner of the chamber. "The signs are everywhere. The ancient terror is returning." Captain Jake Morrison shifted uncomfortably in his seat in the observer section. As one of the first humans to be granted access to Galactic Council meetings, he felt out of place among the strange creatures that filled the chamber. Some looked like walking trees, others resembled giant insects, and a few seemed to be made of living crystal. He had been here for 3 months now, learning about galactic politics as humanity took its first steps into the larger universe. The captain leaned forward as Kethver continued his speech. The alien's words sent a chill down Jake's spine as he described creatures from ancient legends that sounded disturbingly familiar. "The old texts speak of beings called the Devourers," Kethver explained, pulling up holographic images that floated above the podium. "They appeared without warning across 17 star systems over 300 years ago. These creatures walked on 2 legs, had pale skin, and possessed forward-facing eyes like predators." Jake felt his heart skip a beat. The description matched humans perfectly. "They consumed everything in their path," the alien continued. "Resources, technology, even the hope of those they encountered. They bred quickly and adapted to any environment. Nothing could stop them once they decided to take what they wanted." Dr. Lisa Carter, who sat beside Jake, pulled out her datapad and began taking notes frantically. As the expedition's expert on alien cultures and history, she found the similarities between these ancient descriptions and human characteristics deeply troubling. The holographic images showed primitive drawings and written accounts from multiple alien civilizations. Each told the same story of terror and destruction. Peaceful colonies wiped out overnight. Advanced technologies stolen and repurposed. Survivors left with nothing but tales of horror to pass down to their children. "The attacks followed a pattern," said Commander Zarthik of the Catherian Empire, rising from his seat. His reptilian features were hard to read, but his tone suggested barely controlled fear. "They would appear suddenly, take what they needed, and vanish into deep space. No communication, no mercy, no explanation." Jake exchanged glances with Lisa. The timeline bothered him. 300 years ago would place these events during humanity's early expansion into space, when Earth was sending out colony ships to establish new settlements on distant worlds. "What troubles us most," Kethver continued, "is the recent evidence that suggests they may be returning." The chamber fell silent except for the soft humming of translation devices. Several alien representatives shifted nervously in their seats. "Our deep space monitoring stations have detected energy signatures matching those described in the ancient records," Zarthik added. 3 mining colonies in the Outer Rim have gone silent in the past 2 months. The few survivors who escaped speak of attackers matching the old descriptions. Jake's blood ran cold. He knew that human exploration teams had been active in those same regions recently, making first contact with several new species and establishing trade relationships. Lisa leaned over and whispered, "Jake, this doesn't sound right. The timeline matches our colonial expansion period, but humans weren't raiders. We were explorers looking for new homes." "I know," Jake whispered back, "but those colony ships that went missing during the navigation failures, we always assumed they were lost in space." The discussion continued as various species shared their own legends and fears about the Devourers. Each account added new details that made Jake more uncomfortable. The creatures were described as incredibly resourceful, able to repair and modify alien technology despite having no prior knowledge of it. They worked together in small groups with military-like precision. Most disturbing of all, they seemed to specifically target colonies that had resources their ships needed. Ambassador, Veltar of the Crystalline Confederation spoke next, her voice ringing like wind chimes. My people's archives contain detailed accounts of 3 separate encounters with these beings. In each case, they took exactly what they needed and nothing more. Almost as if they were desperate rather than greedy. This detail caught Lisa's attention. She made more notes, connecting the alien testimonies with human historical records she had studied. The missing colony ships from Earth's early expansion had been carrying thousands of desperate people seeking new lives among the stars. If their navigation systems had failed and they found themselves lost in alien space. The archaeological evidence is mounting, Kethver said, displaying new images of recently discovered artifacts. These items were found at attack sites across multiple systems. The technology is primitive but effective, clearly jury-rigged. From salvaged materials, Jake studied the images carefully. The tools and weapons look like something humans might build, if they were stranded and forced to work with unfamiliar alien equipment. The design philosophy was unmistakably human, focused on function over form and built to last under harsh conditions. We must prepare for their return, declared Senator Quindal of the Avian Republics, his feathers ruffling with agitation. Our ancestors' warnings were clear. These devourers showed no interest in negotiation or coexistence. They took what they wanted and left destruction in their wake. The debate that followed was heated but civil. Some species called for increased military patrols and defensive preparations. Others suggested trying to make contact and negotiate if the devourers did return. A few voices argued that the threat might be exaggerated, that 300 years was a long time and perhaps these beings had changed or died out entirely. Throughout the discussion, Jake felt increasingly sick to his stomach. Every detail the aliens shared painted a picture of desperate humans doing whatever it took to survive in hostile alien space. The colony ships that Earth had lost during the early expansion must have somehow ended up in this part of the galaxy, far from any help or hope of rescue. As the formal session ended, Jake approached Kethver with Lisa close behind. The alien ambassador studied them with his large, multifaceted eyes. You seem troubled by our discussion, human, Kethver observed. Does something about the Devourer accounts concern you? Jake chose his words carefully. The descriptions are unsettling. Has your government considered that these beings might have been acting out of desperation rather than malice? Desperation does not excuse the suffering they caused, Kethver replied firmly. Entire bloodlines were lost because of their actions. Children orphaned, colonies destroyed, hope extinguished. Whatever drove them to become monsters, the result was the same. Lisa stepped forward. What if we could help you understand what really happened? Human records from that time period might provide context that could prevent future conflicts. The alien ambassador considered this for a long moment. That would be ... interesting. Perhaps there are lessons to be learned from studying these ancient terrors, even if we never encounter them again. As Jake and Lisa left the council chambers, Jake's communication device chimed with an urgent message from Earth Command. The encrypted text made his stomach drop even further. Long-range sensors detect massive alien fleet approaching human space. Estimated arrival in 6 days. Composition unknown but presumed hostile. All colonial governors and military commanders are to prepare for first contact scenarios. Expect the worst but hope for the best. This is not a drill. Jake showed the message to Lisa, who read it with growing alarm. You don't think she began. I think we're about to find out if those lost colonists really did become the monsters of alien nightmares, Jake replied grimly, and if they did, we're about to pay for their actions 300 years too late. The walk back to their ship felt longer than usual as both humans wrestled with the implications of what they had learned. Somewhere out there, an alien fleet was heading toward Earth, carrying centuries of fear and anger about creatures that might have been human all along. Jake looked up at the alien stars above Zephyria Prime and wondered if humanity was about to face judgment for crimes they never knew they had committed. The morning sun cast long shadows across the New Haven colony as Lieutenant Commander Amy Brooks led her research team toward the excavation site. The terraforming machines had uncovered something unexpected while preparing the northern sector for farming. What started as routine soil analysis had turned into the most important archaeological discovery in human colonial history. Amy knelt beside the freshly exposed artifacts, her scanner beeping rapidly as it detected unusual energy. Signatures. The objects were clearly artificial, but unlike anything in the standard databases. Strange symbols covered their surfaces, carved deep into what appeared to be a metal alloy that Earth science had never seen before. Dr. Kim, what do you make of these markings? Amy asked, pointing to a series of interconnected symbols that seemed to tell a story. Dr. Helen Kim, the team's linguist, studied the carvings through her magnifying scanner. These aren't from any known human language, but the pattern suggests multiple alien scripts. It's like someone was trying to communicate using several different writing systems at once. The artifacts ranged from small tools to larger pieces that might have been parts of weapons or equipment. Each item showed signs of heavy use and rough repair work. Someone had clearly been making do with whatever materials they could find. Back on Earth, Dr. Peter Johnson sat in the basement archives of the Colonial History Institute, surrounded by boxes of documents that hadn't been digitized yet. The request from Captain Morrison had sent him digging through records from humanity's early expansion period. Looking for any connection to the alien stories about the Devourers, Peter pulled out another file marked Project Exodus Classified and broke the ancient wax seal. The documents inside made his hands shake as he read. 3 colony ships had indeed been lost during the navigation. System failures of 2,157. The ships carried nearly 10,000 people total, all desperate families seeking new lives among the stars. The file contained their intended destinations, cargo manifests, and passenger lists. More importantly, it contained the last known coordinates transmitted by their navigation computers before the systems failed. Peter cross-referenced these coordinates with star charts and felt his stomach sink. The ships had been heading directly into what was now known to be heavily populated alien space. A soft chime indicated an incoming priority message on his terminal. Admiral Susan Walsh appeared on the screen, her expression grim. Dr. Johnson, I need you to prepare a full briefing on those lost colony ships. We have a situation developing that requires immediate historical context. Admiral, I think I know what this is about, Peter replied, holding up the classified file. The Exodus ships didn't just disappear. They ended up in alien territory, with 10,000 hungry, desperate people aboard. The massive alien fleet hung at the edge of human space like a collection of deadly jewels against the black of space. Fleet Commander Zarthik stood on the bridge of his flagship, studying the primitive human vessels that had been sent to intercept them. The human ships were tiny compared to his fleet, but they held their position bravely. Commander, the human leader is requesting communication, reported his communications officer. Open the channel, Zarthik ordered. After 800 years, it was time to face the children of the Devourers. Admiral Walsh appeared on the main screen of the alien flagship, her uniform crisp and her manner professional despite the impossible odds she faced. Behind her, the bridge of the human ship looked cramped and functional compared to the spacious alien command center. I am Admiral Susan Walsh, representing the United Earth Colonial Government, she said calmly. State your intentions in human space. Zarthik stepped forward, his reptilian features betraying no emotion. I am Fleet Commander Zarthik of the Catherian Empire, speaking for the Allied Defense Coalition. We know what you are, Admiral Walsh. We have been preparing for your return for 800 years. The words hit Admiral Walsh like a physical blow. I'm not sure what you mean, Commander. This is humanity's first contact with your species. Do not insult our intelligence, Zarthik replied coldly. Your kind spread terror across 17 star systems before vanishing into the void. We have detailed records of every colony you destroyed, every ship you plundered, every life you took. On New Haven, Amy's team had made another discovery. Buried deeper than the artifacts, they found what appeared to be a crude shelter built into the natural rock formations. The construction was clearly human but used alien materials and unfamiliar techniques. "This is incredible," Amy said, shining her light into the underground space. "Someone lived here for months, maybe years. Look at these modifications to the rock walls." Dr. Kim examined tool marks on the stone. These were made with human cutting tools, but the pattern suggests they were working around existing alien technology. Like they found something here and built around it. Amy's scanner detected organic residue in the shelter. The DNA analysis would take time, but she was already certain what they would find. This had been a human hiding place built by people who didn't want to be found. Her communication device buzzed with an urgent message from the orbital defense station. Unknown energy signatures had been detected coming from the northern continent. The signatures matched the patterns found in the alien artifacts. In Earth's Situation Room, Admiral Walsh faced an impossible diplomatic crisis. The alien commanders. Accusations made no sense from humanity's perspective, but the evidence was mounting that something terrible had happened centuries ago. "Commander Zarthik, our records show no evidence of hostile contact with alien civilizations," Admiral Walsh said carefully. "Perhaps there has been some misunderstanding. 300 of your years ago, creatures matching your exact physical description launched coordinated attacks across our territory," Zarthik replied. "They moved in small groups, used primitive but effective weapons, and showed no mercy to civilians." "Are you claiming this was not your species?" Dr. Johnson burst into the Situation Room carrying a stack of files. "Admiral, I need to show you something immediately." The video call was paused while Peter spread out the documents. Colony ship manifests, navigation logs, and passenger records painted a clear picture of desperate humans lost in alien space. The Exodus ships were carrying emergency protocols for resource acquisition, Peter explained. If they couldn't find suitable planets for colonization and were running out of supplies, the manual authorized raids on any available targets to keep the colonists alive. Admiral Walsh stared at the documents in horror. "You're saying our own people became the monsters these aliens remember?" "Not monsters," Peter corrected. "Desperate survivors doing whatever it took to keep their families alive." But from the alien perspective, the communication with the alien fleet resumed. Admiral Walsh chose her words carefully. "Commander Zarthik, we have discovered records that may explain the incidents you describe. It appears that some of our people were indeed in your space 3 centuries ago. But they were not acting under orders from Earth. They were survivors of ship failures, cut off from home and facing starvation." "You expect sympathy for creatures that murdered innocents?" Zarthik's voice grew colder. "I expect understanding that desperate people sometimes do terrible things to survive," Admiral Walsh replied. "The question is whether we can move forward, despite the sins of the past." On New Haven, Amy's team followed the energy signatures deeper into the cave system. What they found changed everything. A massive underground complex stretched into the darkness, clearly built by humans but using a mixture of Earth and alien technology. Emergency lighting flickered on as they entered, powered by some ancient system that still functioned after centuries. The walls were covered with writing in multiple languages. Human and alien scripts mixed together. Dr. Kim read aloud from one of the clearer sections. Day 847 since landfall. The hunting parties brought back supplies from the Catherian outpost. No casualties this time, but their patrols are getting closer. We must be more careful. Amy felt sick as the implications sank in. This wasn't just a hiding place. It was a base of operations for raids on alien settlements. Her scanner detected movement deeper in the complex. Someone or something was still down there. The discovery on New Haven changed everything. The evidence was undeniable now. Humans had indeed been the devourers of alien legend. But the truth was more complex than simple monsters terrorizing the galaxy. Amy's team prepared to investigate the active sections of the underground base. Admiral Walsh faced the reality that humanity would have to answer for crimes committed by desperate colonists 3 centuries ago. The question was whether the galaxy would accept an explanation or demand justice for ancient wrongs. Fleet Commander Zarthik waited for humanity's response, his fleet ready to deliver the judgment his people had planned for 800 years. The children of the Devourers would finally face the consequences of their ancestors' actions. The news spread across human space like wildfire. Every colony, every space station, every ship received the same devastating message. Humanity was not the innocent species they believed themselves to be. Their ancestors had been the terror of the galaxy, the legendary Devourers that alien children still feared in bedtime stories. Captain Jake Morrison stood in the command center of New Haven's orbital station, watching the chaos unfold on communication screens. Riots had broken out on 3 colonies as people struggled to accept the truth. Others demanded immediate military action against the alien fleet, while some called for complete surrender and begged forgiveness for crimes they never knew they had committed. "Captain, we're receiving multiple distress signals from the northern continent," reported Lieutenant Karen Hayes. "The energy readings are getting stronger. Whatever is down there is definitely active." Jake made his decision. Prepare a full expedition team. We need to know what we're dealing with before this situation gets any worse. The underground complex on New Haven was much larger than Amy Brooks had first realized. Her team had been exploring for 6 hours and still hadn't reached the end of the tunnel system. Emergency lighting guided them deeper into the heart of the mountain, where generations of hidden humans had built the entire city beneath the surface. "Look at this," Dr. Kim called out, pointing to a wall covered with photographs and documents. "These are family trees, birth records, death certificates. People have been living here for over 200 years. Amy studied the records carefully. The oldest entries were written in shaky handwriting by people who clearly remembered Earth. Later generations had developed their own style of writing that mixed human letters with alien symbols they had learned during their raids. They kept detailed records of every raid," Amy said, reading from a leather-bound journal. "Listen to this. Day 1203. Took medical supplies from Zephyrian Medical Station. 3 guards injured but not killed. Dr. Martinez says the antibiotics will save young Billy's life. Sometimes being monsters is the only way to save the people you love." The emotional weight of the discovery hit the team hard. These weren't evil creatures who enjoyed causing pain. They were desperate people trying to keep their families alive in a hostile universe, forced to become the very thing they would have fought against back on Earth. A soft voice spoke from the shadows behind them. "You shouldn't be here." Amy spun around to see an elderly man stepping into the light. He was clearly human, but his clothes were a strange mixture of Earth fabrics and alien materials. His skin was weathered and scarred, showing a lifetime of hard survival. "My name is Carl Martinez," the old man said calmly. "My great-grandfather was one of the original colonists who found this place. I suppose you're here because the truth finally came out." Jake's expedition team reached the underground city just as Amy's group was making contact with Carl Martinez. The hidden settlement was more advanced than anyone had expected. Gardens grew under artificial sunlight, powered by alien technology that the colonists had learned to repair and modify over the centuries. "How many of you are there?" Jake asked as Carl led them through the main plaza of the underground city. 43. "At last count," Carl replied. "We were over 200 in my grandfather's time, but many chose to leave and try to make contact with Earth. We never heard from them again." The tour revealed the full scope of what the hidden colonists had accomplished. They had built a completely self-sufficient society using a combination of human knowledge and alien technology they had acquired during the early raids. Medical facilities, workshops, schools, and homes filled the caverns. "Your people stopped the raids," Dr. Kim observed, reading from wall displays that chronicled the colony's history. "The records show no attacks after 2284, Carl nodded sadly. "My great-grandfather made that decision. He said we had become the very monsters we used to fear back on Earth. Better to risk starvation than lose our souls completely." "But you survived?" Amy pointed out. Barely for the first few years, Carl admitted. We learned to trade instead of raid. Small exchanges with alien settlements that needed our technical skills. We fixed their machines and they gave us food and materials. Eventually, we became completely self-sufficient. The revelation that the raiders had voluntarily stopped their attacks and become traders instead would have been hopeful news under normal circumstances. Unfortunately, the galaxy was already mobilizing for war based on centuries-old fears. Admiral Walsh received the reports from New Haven while trying to manage an increasingly desperate diplomatic situation. The alien fleet had been joined by ships from a dozen other species, all demanding justice for the ancient raids. Even worse, several human colonies were calling for preemptive strikes against the aliens, refusing to accept responsibility for their ancestors' actions. Admiral, we have confirmation that survivors from the original Exodus ships are still alive on New Haven, Captain Morrison reported through a secure channel. They've been living underground for centuries and stopped raiding over 200 years ago. That's good news, but I'm not sure it will matter, Admiral Walsh replied grimly. The Galactic Council is meeting an emergency session. Some species are calling for the complete elimination of humanity as a threat to galactic peace. The political situation deteriorated rapidly as more evidence of human raids surfaced. Archaeological teams on 17 different worlds confirmed the alien stories with physical evidence. Tools, weapons, and even human remains found at attack sites proved beyond doubt that humans had been responsible for the Devourer raids. Carl Martinez agreed to speak directly to Earth's leadership via quantum communication. His weathered face appeared on screens across human space as he told the story that had been hidden for 3 centuries. We never wanted to hurt anyone, Carl explained to Admiral Walsh and the assembled Earth government officials. The colony ships that brought our ancestors here were dying. Navigation systems failed, life support was breaking down, and people were starving. When they found inhabited worlds, they had a choice: watch their families die or take what they needed to survive. The raids only lasted for 57 years, Carl continued. Once we established stable settlements and learned to work with alien technology, we stopped taking what wasn't ours. We became traders, mechanics, and helpers, instead of raiders. Admiral Walsh asked the question that everyone was thinking: are there other hidden settlements like yours? Carl hesitated before answering. 12 that we know of. Maybe more. Each colony ship that survived ended up in different parts of the galaxy. Some became raiders like us. Others found empty worlds and built normal colonies. A few became something else entirely. The news that there might be 12 or more hidden human settlements scattered across alien space caused panic in the Galactic Council. If just one group of desperate humans could terrorize 17 star systems, what could 12 groups accomplish if they worked together? Fleet Commander Zarthik sent an ultimatum to Admiral Walsh. Humanity had 3 days to reveal the locations of all hidden settlements and surrender them for judgment. If Earth refused, the alien coalition would begin systematic attacks on human colonies until the Devourers were eliminated completely. We can't give up people who chose to hide rather than hurt others, Admiral Walsh told her senior staff. But we also can't fight a war against half the galaxy. Dr. Johnson had been analyzing the historical records non-stop since the crisis began. His research revealed something that might change everything. The human raids hadn't been random attacks by savage monsters. They followed a very specific pattern that suggested the colonists were trying to find their way home to Earth. Look at the timing and locations, Dr. Johnson explained to the Emergency Council meeting. Each raid brought them closer to human space. They were following star charts, trying to map a route back to Earth. They weren't expanding territory or building an empire. They were lost people trying to get home. The discovery that the Devourers had been trying to return to Earth rather than conquer the galaxy provided new context for their actions. But it also raised a troubling question. If the colonists were heading toward human space, why did they never make it home? What had happened to stop them just when they were getting close to their goal? Carlo Martinez provided the answer during his next communication with Earth. The final raid was different. My great-grandfather's journal says they found something that changed everything. A species that wasn't afraid of them. A species that fought back and won. The implications hit Admiral Walsh immediately. If there was an alien species powerful enough to stop the Devourers 3 centuries ago, they might be willing to help stop the current crisis. But first, humanity would have to find them and convince them that modern humans were different from their raiding ancestors. Time was running out as the alien coalition prepared for war. The Galactic Council had made their decision. The children of the Devourers would face judgment for the crimes of their ancestors, whether they were responsible or not. Carl Martinez made one final offer that might save both sides from a devastating war. Let me speak to the Galactic Council. Let me tell them what really happened and what we became. The journey to the Galactic Council chambers became the most dangerous voyage in human history. Carl Martinez sat quietly in the passenger compartment of Captain Morrison's ship, studying the stars through the viewport. After 3 centuries of hiding, he was about to reveal himself and his people to the very civilizations his ancestors had terrorized. "Are you sure about this?" Jake asked the elderly man. "Once we reach the council chambers, there's no going back. Some of those species have been planning revenge for 800 years, Carl smiled sadly. My great-grandfather spent his last years writing letters he never sent, apologies to people he'd never meet. He said the worst part wasn't the hunger or the fear during the raids. It was living with what they'd become. Maybe it's time to finally deliver those apologies." Dr. Lisa Carter worked frantically at her research station, compiling evidence that might save humanity from total destruction. The hidden colonists had kept detailed records of everything they'd done since arriving in alien space. More importantly, they had documented something that no one in the galaxy knew about. "Jake, you need to see this," Lisa called out, displaying a holographic timeline. Carl's people didn't just stop raiding. They became protectors. Look at these entries from the past 2 centuries. The records showed dozens of incidents where the hidden human settlements had secretly helped alien colonies in distress. They had repaired failing life support systems, shared medical knowledge during plagues, and even defended weaker species from attacks by other aliens. "We never took credit," Carl explained when Lisa showed him the evidence. "My grandfather said we owed the galaxy a debt that could never be fully repaid. So we tried to give back more than we had taken." Meanwhile, extremist groups on both sides worked to sabotage any chance of peace. Human supremacist movements had emerged on several colonies, claiming that humanity should embrace its role as the galaxy's apex predator. They demanded that Earth use the fear of the Devourers as a weapon to conquer alien space. Admiral Walsh received reports of human militants attacking alien diplomatic stations and threatening anyone who supported negotiations with the alien coalition. At the same time, alien extremist factions launched surprise attacks on isolated human outposts, refusing to wait for the Council's official judgment. "The situation is falling apart," Admiral Walsh told Dr. Johnson during an emergency briefing. "Both sides are preparing for war, and the moderates are losing control. If Carl Martinez can't convince the Council to give humanity a chance, we're looking at the complete destruction of human civilization." The alien coalition fleet had grown to over 3,000 ships as more species joined the campaign against humanity. Fleet Commander Zarthik found himself struggling to maintain discipline among commanders who wanted immediate revenge rather than a formal trial. "Commander, the Vorthan Empire demands permission to begin bombardment of human colonies," reported his second-in-command. "They claim waiting for the Council's decision gives the Devourers time to prepare new attacks." "We will follow proper procedures," Zarthik replied firmly. 800 years of preparation will not be wasted on mindless revenge. When we act, it will be with the full authority of galactic law." But even Zarthik had his doubts. His own. People had suffered during the ancient raids, and the desire for vengeance ran deep in Catherian culture. He wondered if he could maintain control if the council sessions went badly. As Jake's ship approached the neutral space station where the Emergency council session would take place. They encountered the aftermath of a brutal space battle. Debris from both human and alien vessels drifted among the stars, evidence that some groups had already chosen violence over negotiation. "This is what happens when fear overcomes reason," Carl observed sadly, looking at the wreckage. "Both sides see monsters where they should see people trying to survive?" Dr. Carter made another crucial discovery while analyzing the hidden settlement's records. The humans weren't the only species that had faced desperate times and made terrible choices. The galaxy was full of civilizations that had dark periods in their histories, times when survival required actions they later regretted. "Carl, did your people ever encounter other species doing the same thing you were doing?" Lisa asked. "Oh yes," Carl replied. The Catherian Empire themselves went through what they call the Red Expansion about 1,000 years ago. They conquered and enslaved dozens of weaker species before their culture evolved beyond that. Most of the species in the Council have similar histories if you look far enough back. This revelation gave Lisa hope. If other species had overcome their own dark periods and been forgiven by the galaxy, perhaps humanity could find redemption as well. The space station hosting the Council session was heavily fortified and surrounded by ships from neutral species. As Jake's ship docked, they were met by a security team that included both humans and aliens working together. It was a rare sight of cooperation in an increasingly divided galaxy. Lieutenant Commander Amy Brooks had arrived ahead of them with more evidence from New Haven. Her team had discovered something in the deepest parts of the underground complex. That changed everything they thought they knew about the hidden settlements. "Carl, your people have abilities that regular humans don't possess," Amy explained, showing him medical scans. "Enhanced reflexes, improved healing, resistance to radiation. 3 centuries of adapting to alien environments has changed you?" Carl nodded. "We noticed the changes starting in my grandfather's generation. Living underground, breathing different air, eating alien foods, being exposed to their technology. We became something new. The implications were staggering. If humans could adapt this quickly to alien environments, what might they become given more time? Some alien species saw this as proof that humans were an evolutionary threat that needed to be eliminated before they became unstoppable. Dr. Johnson had uncovered the most important piece of evidence yet. The final raid that ended the Devourer. Attacks hadn't been stopped by superior alien forces. It had been stopped by the humans themselves when they realized what they were becoming. "The last journal entry from the original colonists explains everything," Dr. Johnson told Admiral Walsh. "Via secure communication, they encountered a peaceful species that reminded them of humanity's better nature. Instead of raiding, they chose to help these aliens defend against other threats. That decision broke the cycle of violence and started their transformation into protectors. The species that had changed the colonists' hearts were called the Serenians, a group of philosophers and healers who believed in redemption through service to others. They had shown the desperate humans that there was another way to survive, without becoming monsters. As the council session prepared to begin, Carl Martinez requested a private meeting with Fleet Commander Zarthik. The 2 men, who represented opposing sides of an ancient conflict, sat across from each other in a small conference room, surrounded by centuries of pain and mistrust. "Your people suffered because of mine," Carl said directly. "Nothing I say can undo that pain or bring back the lives that were lost. But I need you to understand that we never stopped caring about the harm we caused." Zarthik studied the human carefully. "Then why did you hide instead of facing justice?" "Because we knew that justice would mean the death of innocent children, who were born long after the raids ended," Carl replied. "Our descendants didn't choose to be the children of raiders. They chose to be healers and protectors instead. Would killing them truly honor the memory of those we hurt?" The conversation continued for hours as both men shared the stories of their people's suffering and survival. Slowly, Zarthik began to understand that the situation was more complex than simple good versus evil. The formal council session would begin in 12 hours. Representatives from 47 species had arrived to decide humanity's fate. Some came seeking justice, others demanded revenge, and a few hoped for reconciliation. Carl Martinez prepared to face the descendants of the people his ancestors had terrorized. In his hands, he carried the original letters of apology written by his great-grandfather, along with evidence of 3 centuries of secret service to the galaxy. The question that would determine the future of human civilization was simple but profound. Could the galaxy forgive the children for the sins of their fathers, especially when those children had spent their lives trying to make amends for crimes they never committed? The great council chamber fell silent as Carl Martinez walked slowly to the center podium. Representatives from 47 species watched him with a mixture of fear, curiosity, and anger. For the first time in 3 centuries, a descendant of the legendary devourer stood before the civilizations his ancestors had terrorized. Carl placed his hands on the speaking platform and looked up at the assembled aliens. His weathered face showed every year of his 73 years, but his eyes held a clarity that commanded attention. In his jacket pocket he carried the handwritten letters his great-grandfather had never been able to send. "My name is Carl Martinez," he began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's translation systems. "My great-grandfather was Jonathan Martinez, commander of the colony ship New Horizon. 312 years ago, his ship was one of 3 vessels that failed to reach their intended destinations and ended up lost in your space." The chamber remained quiet, but Carl could sense the tension building as representatives leaned forward to hear his words. "I stand before you today not to make excuses for what my people did, but to tell you the truth about who we became after the raids ended." Ambassador Kethver of the Ethereal Collective spoke first. "The Devourers took everything from my people's colony on Methys Prime. 17,000 beings died because of your ancestors' hunger. What truth could possibly justify such actions?" Carl nodded sadly. "No truth can justify the loss of innocent lives, but perhaps understanding can prevent future tragedies." He pulled out an ancient journal from his jacket. "These are my great-grandfather's own words, written during the final year of the raids." He opened the journal and read aloud. "Day 2847 since leaving Earth. We attacked another settlement today. Medical supplies and food taken. No casualties this time, thank the stars. I see what we're becoming and I hate myself for it. But little Sarah Martinez would have died without those antibiotics. How many alien children have died so my granddaughter could live? When did survival turn us into the monsters we once fought against?" The emotional weight of the words affected the chamber. Several alien representatives shifted uncomfortably, recognizing the genuine pain in the ancient human's writing. "The raids ended when we encountered the Serenians," Carl continued. "They were under attack by a species called the Void Hunters. My great-grandfather's people could have taken what they needed from the Serenian colony and left them to die. Instead, they chose to fight alongside them." Fleet Commander Zarthik stood up from his position. "Why should we believe the word of raiders who lied and stole for decades?" Carl looked directly at him. "Because we kept records of everything we did after that day? Not just the raids, but the centuries of service that followed." Dr. Lisa Carter stepped forward and activated a holographic display. The evidence she had compiled showed incident after incident of hidden human settlements secretly helping alien colonies in distress. Medical aid during plagues, technical assistance with failing equipment, and protection from hostile forces. "The humans have been the galaxy's anonymous guardians for over 200 years, Lisa explained. "They've saved more lives than their ancestors ever took, expecting nothing in return." Senator Quindle of the Avian Republics examined the data carefully. "These records show human intervention in situations across thousands of light years." "How many settlements are we talking about?" 12 confirmed colonies, Carl replied. "Each founded by survivors from the original lost ships. Some became traitors, others became hermits, and a few became what we are now. Protectors working in secret to repay a debt that can never be fully settled." The revelation that there were hidden human colonies scattered throughout the galaxy caused murmurs of concern among the representatives. Admiral Walsh, watching from the human observer section, held her breath as she waited for the alien's reaction. Ambassador Veltar of the Crystalline Confederation spoke next. Your words are compelling, but how do we know these hidden colonies won't return to raiding if they face difficult times again? Carl smiled sadly. Because we already faced difficult times, and chose differently. 30 years ago, my colony's life support systems began failing. We could have raided nearby settlements for replacement parts. Instead, we contacted the local species and offered our technical services in exchange for help. They not only provided the parts we needed, but invited us to establish open trade relationships. You revealed yourselves? Zarthik asked in surprise. To the Andromedan Trade Confederation? Yes. They've known about us for 3 decades and consider us valuable partners. We've helped them defend against pirate attacks and shared our expertise in adapting alien technology. This news shocked the Council. If one group of aliens had already accepted and worked with the descendants of the Devourers, it suggested that coexistence was possible. Dr. Johnson stood up from the human section. I have additional evidence that the Council should consider. The human colonial raids followed a specific pattern that shows they were trying to return to Earth, not establish a permanent presence in alien space. They were lost people trying to find their way home. The historical analysis showed that each raid had brought the colonists closer to human space. They weren't building an empire or seeking conquest. They were following star charts and navigation. Beacons, desperately trying to map a route back to the world they had been forced to leave. Why didn't they complete their journey? Asked Ambassador Cathfear. Carl answered quietly. Because they realized that returning to Earth would bring war to your galaxy. The final entries in my great-grandfather's journal explain his decision. He wrote, "We cannot go home as conquerors. We cannot face our families knowing we became the very evil we sought to escape. Better to remain lost and try to become something better." The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The Devourers hadn't disappeared because they were defeated or destroyed. They had chosen exile to protect both Earth and the alien civilizations they had wronged. Commander Zarthik wrestled with conflicting emotions. His people had prepared for centuries to face the return of the Devourers, but the reality was far more complex than their legends suggested. "What do you propose we do with this knowledge?" he asked Carl. "I propose we learn from the past instead of being prisoners to it," Carl replied. "My people have spent 3 centuries trying to earn redemption through service. Perhaps it's time to make that service official." Admiral Walsh stood up and addressed the Council. "Humanity offers a formal alliance with any species willing to accept us as partners rather than conquerors. We propose joint colonies, shared technology, and cooperative defense against real threats to galactic peace." The debate that followed was intense and emotional. Some species, particularly those who had benefited from secret human protection, spoke in favor of the alliance. Others, still traumatized by ancestral memories of the raids, argued for continued isolation or worse. The surprise came when Ambassador Kethver spoke again. "The Ethereal Collective has reviewed the evidence presented today. While we cannot forget the suffering our ancestors endured, we recognize that punishing innocent descendants for ancient crimes serves no constructive purpose. Furthermore," he continued, "our own historical analysis shows that the human interventions of the past 2 centuries have prevented at least 43 major conflicts and saved millions of lives across 17 star systems." Fleet Commander Zarthik found himself in an impossible position. His fleet had come here seeking justice for ancient wrongs. But the reality was that justice had already been served through centuries of anonymous service. "The Kitherian Empire will support a probationary alliance," he announced finally. "Humanity will be granted conditional membership in the Galactic Council, subject to complete transparency about all hidden settlements and full cooperation in peaceful endeavors." The vote was closer than anyone had hoped, but wider than anyone had feared. 26 species voted in favor of the alliance, 15 voted against, and 6 abstained. Humanity would be given a chance to prove that they had truly evolved beyond Their dark beginnings, Carl Martinez, felt tears in his eyes as he realized that his great-grandfather's dream of redemption had finally been achieved. The children of the Devourers would no longer hide in shame, but stand openly as partners in building a better galaxy. 6 months later, the first integrated human-alien colony was established on New Haven. Carl served as the human ambassador, working alongside alien representatives to create a new model of cooperation. The underground cities that had hidden humanity's shame became research centers where human and alien scientists worked together to solve galactic challenges. Captain Morrison stood in the observation deck of the orbital station, watching human and alien children play together in the colony's central park. The transformation seemed impossible, but the evidence was right in front of him. The beings that other species had dreaded for centuries were indeed humans, but they had become something far greater than their fearsome reputation suggested. They had evolved from desperate survivors into the galaxy's secret guardians, and now they would serve openly as partners in building a future where no species would face extinction alone.